Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to Season 2 of the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone Puzzle Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching, creator of the Hormone Puzzle Method, an infertility warrior, two-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptom of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the fields of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now let's get started on your road to transformation. I am so excited to introduce y'all to Stu Schaefer. He is a 20-year award-winning weight loss coach. He specializes in helping people reset their body so they can lose weight like they did in their 20s. Stu struggled with anorexia in his teens, and when he overcame his eating disorder, he realized he wanted to help people create their perfect body in a healthy and sustainable way. Since then, Stu has helped thousands of people transform their body and empower themselves to create massive success in their life. Listen in as we talk about hormones, about the number one thing that you can do to lose weight and keep it off, and something he calls his magic bullet for optimizing your gut, your health, and your fertility. This is a show you're not going to want to miss. Now, without further ado, I would love to welcome my friend Stu to the show. Hey, Stu, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me. We were just talking before this, and I think we're gonna share some dynamite stuff.
For sure. So tell us a little bit more about you. How did you start working in women's health?
That's a great question. So when I was in 9th grade, a year earlier, I had ended up breaking into a house with some friends. One of those stupid things that kids do, but in this case, they pressed charges against me and my friends, and we went to jail. So, it was like this life altering world upside down experience. And, different people react differently. And the way I reacted was that I hated myself. I ended up really hating myself, and that manifested into big time body issues. I struggled with anorexia for about a year and a half after that. And I started exercising compulsively. And it was just because I just didn't know how to react. And so it's kind of like this self-punishment kind of thing. Well, finally, I don't know, there was a breaking point. I think I literally almost had a breakdown, a mental breakdown. School was hard. I was doing this. I wasn't eating. And, at that age, your body needs the nutrients. You're growing, and so I just had this breakdown, and I was just crying. I remember crying, and somehow, I don't remember exactly how it was. I don't think my parents knew, but my mom, was a nurse at the time. And so somehow her and I started talking and coming up with a nutrition something or other.
Wow.
And we happened to read an article in the paper about nutrition. And it was in 1999 when a book called Body for Life had just come out. And that book was like a runaway bestseller at the time.
I remember that book.
So my mom and I went out that day to Borders Books in our local area, bought the book. I think I read it 3 times all the way through that day. And you have to understand where I was at is I was lost. And for some reason, that book was what I needed at the time to really hone back in my mindset and believe in myself. And I remember though, I started following it, but for a month solid, I had anxiety all day, every single day, because every single time I ate, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fat. This is going to make me fat. I can't believe this. But I was like, all right, I see the before and after pictures. I'm going to just stick with the program. So every time I would eat, which was all day long, I would feel tons of anxiety, and it lasted about a month. And then I realized I'm not getting fat. In fact, I'm feeling good and my body looks better. And okay, this is great. And, I do remember specifically in that moment, I was in 9th grade. I even remember the hallway in the high school that I was at. And I thought, I'm going to be a fitness and health coach, because I just experienced how powerful a physical transformation is and how it can create so much other success in life. It's like a springboard. And I thought, geez, I understand what people are going through. I understand when they don't like who they are, they feel lost, they feel anxious, they don't know what to do. They're thinking about giving up. They just want to bury themselves under pillows and a blanket and just not do anything. And I thought, if only they had this one physical change, that would be enough to get them like into succeeding in other areas. And so that's what I did. And that was back in 1999.
Wow. That's such an incredible story. And it's so crazy that you say that book, Body for Life, because I remember reading that book about in 99, and it was definitely a huge game changer for me. I love that story. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about hormones. Why do you think most women think hormones are kind of what's driving their weight?
Yeah, that's true.
How do we kind of get around that?
Oh man. Well, so I work with mostly women and in their 40s and 50s. And what'll happen is, let me give you an example. I once had a client named Ashley, and Ashley had been trying to lose weight for 6 years. She came to me, this was 2009. And she came to me in the gym, and she needed to lose about 50 or 60 pounds. And she said, I don't know what's going on. I've tried everything. She was in her early 40s. She had a daughter. She was married. Her daughter had special needs. And she said, I've tried everything. And I really need someone who can work with me on this and figure this out. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and get going. And I put her on the plan that I would put most people on. And she was like, I think my thyroid or my hormones are off. And I said, okay, well, let's check this out. So we ended up trying a lot of stuff, and it didn't work. And this is where I actually figured out what was going on. And we tried Atkins, or she had tried Atkins. It didn't work. We did the typical restriction of calories. That didn't work. We tried to up her exercise. That didn't work. We did a version of like the paleo where we cut out all the grains and stuff. That didn't work. And so I literally was like, she was in tears, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to blow it. Like, this is the most embarrassing moment of my life. And so I said, I'm going to do some research. And so I said, let me do this. Let me keep working with you at no cost. I've got to figure this out. We're going to do this. I said, stay with me. We're going to do this. So as I did research, what I found out was that it's not hormones 9 out of 10 times. What it is what I call, it's called a repressed metabolism. Okay. And I'm going to explain what that is in just a second. But in essence, Ashley she had gone through so many diets before. She had starved herself before. She had done the pills that curb your appetite so you can't eat and whatever. And what she had done is really repressed her metabolism, put herself in something called a catabolic state. Now, when your body's in a catabolic state, and we've talked about this before, your body literally burns muscle and stores fat. It thinks it's under attack. It's not getting the nutrients that it needs to function right. And so it does the opposite of what we want. When I was doing my research, I came across 2 things, by the way. Low carb, if you don't get enough carbs for long enough, it causes, or if you get too high of fat for long enough, it causes something called a diet-induced hypothyroid. So too much fat or too low carbs for extended amounts of time will actually drop your T3 levels and in some cases your T4 levels.
Wow.
And I just confirmed that again by looking up some studies online. So that is, it's legit. So I went back to Ashley and I said, look, I want you to eat more, but we're going to structure it different. We're going to structure it by really eating the right foods at the right time of day in the right quantities so that we don't get any big meals. We don't get a ton of carbohydrates at night when your body's trying to slow down. We feed your body the protein it needs because protein has been proven to stimulate your metabolism. And then also I want you to work out less. And she looked at me and she said, how is that possibly going to work? And I said, look, we've tried everything else. I said, let's do this for 2 weeks. Worst case scenario, if you go up a pound, we'll stop immediately and we'll figure this out. So the 2 weeks go by, she drops like 3 pounds, but she's still not that excited. And quite honestly, neither was I, because we're both thinking, okay, it's a fluke. Then the next week goes by, she drops another 1.5 pounds. Then the next week goes by, she drops 2 pounds. At the end of 12 weeks, she had dropped 23 pounds. Wow. And she's like, why did this work? What happened? And I was like, it wasn't your hormones. It wasn't your thyroid. You were eating too little. You had repressed your metabolism. You had put your body into a catabolic state, which a lot of people, they are. And you're working out too much, which was also keeping it in a catabolic state and overstressing your body. And when we finally de-stressed and fed the body the way it was designed to be fed, it could actually burn the fat that it was trying to get burned. So a lot of women, especially in their 50s, are like, okay, well, my hormones are off, or my thyroid, something's wrong with my thyroid. And that's not what's going on. 8 times out of 10, I should say. 2 out of 10, it could be a thyroid. 8 times out of 10, it's the repressed metabolism.
Interesting. And I'm a big proponent of let's test. Let's not just guess. I want to see exactly what your hormones are doing. And if it's not your hormones, then I want to see, and that's what I see a lot, is that you're eating too little, you're working out too much, and your body's in this crazed, stressed out state where it's like, I'm going to hold on to every bit of food you give me, so I'm not starving to death. So I love that analogy. So let's
talk here, the best part of that story is when Ashley and I finished, she could actually keep the weight off and keep going because it wasn't, she didn't just lose weight if she starved herself. She was eating a ton of food. She was always full, and she was like, hey, this is great, and I can keep losing, and it's a sustainable thing. By the way, her energy went up through the roof because she was getting the nutrients. So overall, it wasn't just she lost the weight, but now she was in control of her body and she felt good. So huge shift.
I love that. I love that. And I'm a big fan too of balance. I talk balanced whole food nutrition, not high fat, not low carb, not, keto or any of those other things. I want you eating balance. So it sounds like you agree. You
totally
balanced nutrition.
What they found was that, so here's something interesting, which I've been researching as well, is right now we're in a fad and people don't realize it. And the fad that we're in is a high fat fad. Okay. Now I just want to, if you're listening, this is going to make all the sense in the world, and you're going to understand why keto is so popular now and why it really shouldn't be. In the 50s and 60s, they did 2 things to lose weight. They stopped eating and they started smoking. That's what they did. Okay. I mean, I'm just being honest. That's what they did. It's smoking. I mean, they didn't know any better. And then in the 70s and even into the 80s, it was the low fat. Okay. That was the low fat fad. And everyone, doctors, scientists, everyone were convinced. They were convinced that if you cut out fat, you would lose weight. But we didn't lose weight because instead of having fat, more people consumed more carbohydrates and sugar. So then in the 90s, they said, okay, we got it wrong. It's actually low carb. Okay. You got to cut the carbs.
Right.
So in the 90s, it was low carb. Atkins was super popular. But then people they still weren't really getting the results that they wanted. And so then it was high protein. Okay. They said, no, you got to go high protein, low carb, and moderate fat. And then just shortly after, they said, okay, it's gluten free.
Right.
And so things kept evolving. And then they all of a sudden went, okay, it's neither of those. It's high fat. If you can get your body in ketosis, you're going to be burning fat. And so we keep doing it. And each phase everyone's 100% convinced, hey, this is it. This is it. We have reached the pinnacle. Science breakthroughs. We've got it. And then we look back 10 years later and go, okay, well, maybe not. But all these diets have one thing in common. They're all extreme in one way or another. Okay. And I see the next fad coming, and I'll tell you what it is. As soon as I mention it, you're going to agree with me, because you'll say, oh yeah, you're right. The next fad that's coming after this high fat fad, which I think probably got 2 or 3 more years in, is going to be a plant-based fad. Okay. And already the hamburgers are turning into plant burgers at McDonald's. So what's going to happen is, and there's meat shaming now happening. Doctor told me about meat shaming. So then everyone's going to say, oh yeah, meats are all bad. And then all these women are going to have hormone issues because they're going to be anemic. So everything has a huge drawback. But what happens is the marketers latch onto it. If 3 years ago you came up with anything keto, you made tons of money. That's just how it went, because it was a fad and people were on the bandwagon. Now you're going to see companies coming up with plant-based stuff because they're going to make money. So, ethically, I was pondering the other night, maybe I should get on the plant-based thing. And I just say, no, it's not. I don't believe in it. I know it's not right. It's not worth it to make a quick cash just to capitalize on a fad. So, if you look and review, you'll see that everything I just said is accurate.
I agree. And, that's one thing we talk a lot about on the show, is that you need protein to make hormones. Those are your raw materials. That's your amino acids. You need that to make these hormones. And definitely, if you're not eating enough meat, you're going to be anemic. You're going to be low in iron, all of that. Your connective tissues, so definitely it comes back to that balance. You got to have balance for sure.
Yes. Well, and you need carbs for the hormones to function too.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just, you need it all. And it's knowing how much to have and when to have it and how to combine it so that you work with your body instead of against it. And that's the big difference.
Exactly. So let's go into that a little bit.
Okay.
Talk to me about kind of like a basic plate, and after that, we'll go into some meal timing, what that looks like.
Okay. And I want to share a story that'll convey this perfectly, because this show obviously is about fertility. And a lot of women don't realize, maybe some do because their doctors have actually told them, but I had a client named Steph who had come to me because she needed to lose weight in order to get pregnant. And what the doctor had said was, you can't starve yourself. You can't do these diets because that'll backfire. So she came to me and she said, Stu, I need to lose about 20 pounds. Doctor wants me to lose 20 pounds, says it's going to increase my chances of getting pregnant like tenfold. But I can't I have to do it without like hurting my body. I said, perfect. This is what I do, and this was probably, about 7 years ago. And I had known her. She's actually my accountant. And we're still in touch today. She had 2 kids. She came to me twice because both times she needed to lose weight. So,
awesome.
And we did the same thing both times, and it worked like a charm. But in essence, what we did was, when someone wants to lose weight, the real way to do it is to eat more, like I referenced with Ashley, eat more, work out a little bit less. And I know that sounds weird. So let's talk about what I did with Steph, and I'll show you how it worked. So what we did is I told Steph, look, there's 4 cardinal rules that I want you to follow. The first is, I want you to have a protein from an animal at every single meal, because that's what's called a complete protein. And what that means is it has all the amino acids, and that's what your body really needs to fix itself and to recover and repair and do all those amazing things that it does. I said, but you also need to have a carbohydrate, and it needs to be more of a complex. And we looked at the kinds that would fit the bill. In essence, you just want to stay away from like processed, floury, sugar carbohydrates. So we found a list of foods she loved. There's corn tortillas she liked. Trying to think of what else was her favorite. She liked rice, so she did some of that. She liked sweet potatoes, so she did some of those. And she had some fruit, all right, during the day. So it was a mixture of things she really liked. And then we added vegetables in, not only for the vitamins and minerals, but those are also can be a source of good carbohydrates, but they have fiber. And the reason that's important is it slows down the absorption. And so your blood sugar doesn't spike. Now, the reason I was telling Steph about this is because if you can regulate your blood sugar, not only does that help you lose weight really fast, but it helps regulate everything else in the body. Your thyroid, your hormones, your endocrine system, which, as you know, all go towards the fertility piece and optimizing your body. And this is what the doctor was talking about when he told Steph, hey, you got to do it without hurting your body. So Steph was eating 5 or 6 meals a day. She was like, this is great. Like it tastes good. I'm full all the time. Like this is awesome. I could do this forever. I'm like, good. That's what I want. That's what I want you to say. And then we were doing about 30 minutes of exercise 6 days a week. Some of it was cardio. Some of it was weight training. And we were being very cautious not to do anything like high intensity training because we didn't want to overstress her body. So she dropped in 8 weeks, I think. I'll have to double check this, but I think it was 8 or 10 weeks. She dropped about 21 pounds. And she said she went from 25% body fat down to 19.
Wow.
And I remember 19 because that was the goal that we set, was to get below 20, which is a really good fitness level, but it's also maintainable. It's not too low. But if a woman's at 19, they look really good. They look fit. So she got there. We took a before and after picture, which looked amazing.
I bet.
And then she got pregnant.
Yay.
and then
she had to come back to see you.
Yeah. And then about 2 or 3 years later, she said, all right, I need to do it again. But it was that was what was so awesome, is that it worked quickly. And then again, she learned how to do this so that she wasn't starving herself. She wasn't working out for hours and hours, and it was priming her body to maximize the body's, I guess, how it was functioning, functionality. And so what we did with the meals, and this is how it works, is there's 4 components of nutrition. I call it the food quadrant. Okay. This is something I've come up with based on research. Most diets will talk about either what to eat or how much to eat. Okay. 99.9%. And that's only half the equation. All right. The other half is, when should you eat certain foods during the day and when should you not? And how do you combine the right foods at each meal to do what I just mentioned, to really make the body thermogenic so it burns fat, and to control that blood sugar. And that's what we did with Steph. And that's what I learned with Ashley. And this is why our clients get such amazing results, because this is the real deal. This is not a diet. It's how to eat. And they should teach this in schools, but they don't.
No.
And so the fundamentals are this, okay, without getting into something that's too specific, since it's somewhat custom per person, but you do want a protein at every meal, because that is like the building block of the body. It's not that you have to have a ton, you just need it at every meal. Okay. That helps slow the absorption of the carbohydrates down so that your body doesn't shoot up its insulin levels, its blood sugar levels, and release insulin, and then, store the excess carbohydrates as triglycerides and fatty acids. Okay. That's really what causes most people to gain fat. And then not to have the carbs at night, because carbohydrates are the first source of energy the body will use. And if you're going to bed and your body doesn't need to use any energy, it ain't going to have anything to do with those carbs. So it's either going to store them in your muscles. And most people, if they're not training with weights, which is another point that I need to make, they won't have very good glycogen storage. So it'll end up storing it as fat instead. And this is where Americans go wrong, as you know.
Yes. They
skip breakfast. They eat a moderate lunch, and they have a huge dinner with alcohol, dessert, pasta, rice, yam, whatever. And even though it's healthy foods, they pump all these carbohydrates into their body right before their body needs to slow down. And so then the body goes, okay, well, I need to go to bed. I don't know what to do with all this, so I guess I'll just store it as fat.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. Crazy. So can you go into a little bit more detail on that, as far as for those listening, what would be a size of a protein source and some of your favorite protein sources? Same with carbs. What would the size be, and then some of your faves?
So this is an interesting question. I will tell you my favorite foods. The size is based on your body because let me give you an example. A 120-pound woman cannot assimilate or digest or use the same amount of protein in one sitting as, say, a 250-pound man. Okay.
Right.
And it's a lot. It's really based on lean body mass, but weight is obviously a factor in that. So what you have to decide is, first of all, there's three things. How much do you weigh? How much lean body mass do you have? And what are you trying to do? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to maintain your weight, but lose body fat and replace it with lean muscle? Or are you trying to gain lean muscle? Okay, those are really the three options. And so let's just assume that there is a 150-pound woman who is trying to lose weight. All right. And is reasonably healthy, meaning they're not obese. They're a little overweight. Okay. I'm just trying to take an average, and I hope I don't offend anybody. I'm not singling anybody out.
No, that's perfect. Yeah. Let's just do average size woman.
Sure. And so I would say on average, a woman that size, depending on, see, now this is where it also gets tricky. And I need to put this in here because this is important. This is the reason that intermittent fasting is not good and not conducive for long-term weight loss, is because the amount of protein you're going to need, you want to get it in small doses. And that means you're going to need to get more meals, so that, because if, let's say with the intermittent fasting, you eat twice a day, there's no way that you can take what you need and divide it into 2 meals and your body's going to be able to absorb it. That's just not going to work. And so bodybuilders obviously have known this for years. They're some of the leanest people on the planet. This is why I reference them. I'm not saying anyone wants to look like a bodybuilder, but they're the leanest people, and they eat 6 or 7 times a day. The athletes who only eat once or twice a day are sumo wrestlers. Okay. Because they know that's the fastest way to gain weight. I'm not kidding. So I call intermittent fasting the sumo wrestler diet. So let's just say a typical woman can absorb on average somewhere around 25 grams of protein, maybe up to 30. Okay. And so if they're eating, 4 or 5 meals a day, they're going to have to push that upper limit. If they're eating 5 or 6 meals a day, they can get that lower limit so that they're not overly full and their body can actually utilize what it's putting in. So some of the best sources of protein, if you're really getting technical, I'd say organic stuff, right? No steroids, no hormones, but things like chicken breasts, turkey breasts, tuna, salmon, other fish. I will tell you one of the biggest misconceptions is when people eat lean ground meat, either lean ground turkey or lean ground beef. And the package says 97% lean. And they say, okay, it's only got 3% fat. And that's not accurate. When they say 97% lean, they measure it by weight, which is irrelevant because when you're talking about if it's high in fat or not, you need to know based on the caloric value. So if you take 97% lean ground meat and you say, what's actually the fat content? It's 40% or higher.
Wow.
And so people say, I'm eating lean meat, and really it's almost half fat. And so they don't realize that. And so but if you do chicken breast or turkey breast, or the fish and it's organic or it's natural caught, you're going to get a much more pure source of protein that is not hidden, with fats. Does that make sense?
Yes, for sure. So do you recommend any red meats?
Yeah, absolutely. You can have like a couple. Bison can be good if you get a lean cut. Flank steak is a good cut of lean red meat. The red meat is great because it's got iron. It has other minerals and vitamins that are essential, especially for women, that women tend to lack more than men. The problem is, most people, they'll get a New York strip steak, or something, and it's just laden with fat because it makes it softer and makes it taste better. But, if you do a marinade and you let a flank steak sit overnight in a marinade, where maybe you put some Italian dressing or some other liquids, it really gets tender and juicy and it's delicious, and so there's really no reason not to have that. That was a good question. I'm sorry I left that out.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. And I am a big fan of cycle syncing. So I talk to my clients about, putting in that red meat during certain times of your cycle, get the iron you need, but then during the other times of your cycle, maybe going more towards the fish and the chicken. So it's not, you're not heavily red meat all the time.
Yeah. You know what I found to be most successful with myself and my clients is having a mixture of different sources every day. So like you may have a red meat at lunch, a chicken or fish at dinner or for one of your snacks, maybe some egg whites. That's another good source if you're not allergic to eggs in the morning. And that's a great way to keep it mixed up a little bit and to keep some variety in there. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on dairy. There's so many conflicting, go dairy free, don't go dairy free. Like, what is your take on that?
Well, I think, the easiest way to answer this is eat dairy and see how you feel. Mm-hmm. If you have any bloating, gas, upset stomach, brain fog, or fatigue, within the same day, let's say, of eating. Let's say you had some cottage cheese or some yogurt or something at lunch. All right. And then in the afternoon, you're like, dang, I'm just really sluggish. Okay. Maybe that's the dairy. And so what you want to do then is make a mental note and cut it out for a little while and then add it back in and see if it has the same effect. Mm-hmm. The stat that I read is that back in the day, we had a term called lactose intolerant. Okay. Mm-hmm. Where, you can't have the lactose, which is the protein. No, it's the sugar, it's the carbohydrate in milk and dairy. And there's also casein protein, which some people don't digest well. So those are the two things that are at work here. Well, now I guess the term is like the opposite. It's like lactose, not tolerant, but it's something because I guess 80% of people worldwide do not digest and break down dairy very well. Mm-hmm. So there may not be an allergy, there may be a sensitivity. Mm-hmm. And so what you would want to look at is, number one, what I just explained about your feet, how you physically feel. And number two is, if you're trying to lose weight and you're not budging and there's, you're like, let me try, you might try cutting out the dairy and then seeing if your weight moves. And again, if it does, and you'd want to go about 2 weeks, if it does, then that there's a good chance you got a food sensitivity to it. Okay. Exactly. That would be my recommendation. I would never say, no one should ever have dairy, or say, dairy is amazing. And there's other types of dairy. For example, goat's milk is becoming more popular because most people are not allergic or sensitive to goat's milk, where they are to the cow's milk, and so it's just a very interesting, I don't even know what to say, a very interesting phenomenon.
Yes, for sure. I love goat's cheese. If I have cheese, and sometimes I don't have cheese at all, but if I do, it'll be goat's cheese. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I'm sure it's similar with gluten. There's a big controversy. Don't eat gluten, do eat gluten. But I do the same thing that you suggest. I say, let's see how your body reacts to it. And if you are eating gluten and you're not sensitive, I don't want it coming from a package. It needs to be, fresh gluten, fresh bread, fresh, something homemade. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so, this is funny because I would say, about 6 months ago, I was working with a client and she ended up losing 29 pounds in 12 weeks. And she's diabetic. She's in her 50s, type 1 diabetes. So there's nothing she could do to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. And same thing. She was like on a mission to lose the weight. And I said, there's no problem. So I started her off just like, with Ashley or with Steph with the same kind of protocol that I've learned. And she was losing like 2 pounds, 3 pounds a week. And then she hit a plateau. Mm. And she said, well, I stopped. What's going on? And I said, well, let me look. Everything looked good. Her exercise wasn't too much. Everything looked good. Her eating looked good. And I said, okay, I think there's like 3 possible foods that you could be eating right now that might be causing a very small sensitivity. She had no symptoms. And so we looked at the dairy, we looked at the flour, like she was having some tortillas, and we looked at tomatoes as a nightshade possibility. And so she cut out the dairy. It wasn't the dairy. And she was like, oh, thank God, because she loved her cottage cheese and she wanted to keep eating cottage cheese. So that was good. We replaced the flour tortillas with the corn tortillas. She dropped a little bit, but it wasn't like substantial. It was the tomatoes. She was having the tomatoes at night, and the tomatoes had a little bit more sugar than she realized. So it was impacting her blood sugar. And I think she was a little bit sensitive to them as well. As a result, though, she ended up using 1/8 of the amount of insulin as she was normally using.
Wow.
Because she was able to balance out her blood sugar. And that was huge.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
That's so crazy. Yeah.
So, I mean, here's the thing. If you're listening, you may say, gosh, this sounds weird. I have to keep track of all my foods. Here's the system I use. And this seems to be the easiest for most people. Come up with a day's worth of eating. Come up with some meals that you like, or if you're working with someone, have them come up with something. If you're trying to lose weight or balance out your body or whatever, have them come up with something you really like, and follow that for 1 week where you eat the same lunch. Like each meal could be different, but each day is the same. So breakfast is the same for a week, and then lunch is the same for a week, so that there's less variables. That way you don't have to like journal it and like pay close attention to everything. And do that for a week. Make sure it's foods you like. And then if you can look at what happens, maybe in that week you end up losing weight because it turns out you're just eating so inconsistently that just a little bit of that consistency is what you need. But if you don't, then you can say, okay, what are the high probability foods that people have allergies to, which typically is gluten, dairy, sugar, in some cases corn, in some cases eggs, and in some cases peanuts. All right. Those are like kind of the big ones. So see if you're eating any of those foods. And if you are, pull one of them out and say for a week and see if it makes a difference. If it does, you know something's up. If it doesn't, put it back in, then pull another one out, and same thing, and just kind of be a little bit systematic about it. And in 3 to 4 weeks, you'll pretty much know which foods, if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to balance out your body or you're trying to increase your fertility, you'll know which foods your body really doesn't like that are kind of sabotaging the body. Okay. Now I do have a magic bullet for this, but we'll get to that later. It's pretty amazing.
For sure. And I love that you say that, because I start all my clients with something I call a reset. And that's exactly what we do. We take out any food that causes inflammation. We put in whole food nutrition, and then we add them back in to see what's affecting things. And if you have symptoms, then we can decide, okay, the symptoms are so bad, I don't want to feel that ever again. I'm taking this food out of my diet. Or if they're not that bad and you're like, I love freaking cheese, then you can decide to leave it back in. So it's a great way to kind of judge what you're sensitive to or not. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. I always do it in reverse. I because a lot of my clients, they if I said, okay, you got to cut out all these foods, they'd be like, what? So I always do it in reverse. I say, hey, come up with something you like, and let's do that first. And then we'll look at what foods could be, and we'll pull them out one at a time and see if there's a difference. And they seem to wrap their heads around that a little bit better.
Makes sense. I love it. Well, we're going to take a short break to hear a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, I want to dive in more, your magic bullet for that meal plan. I want to talk about more meal timing and just practical tips for optimizing your fertility through nutrition and lifestyle. So we'll be right back. Hey, Stu, welcome back.
Awesome to be here. I'm so excited. The magic bullet is coming.
Yes, let's dive into that. What is that, and how can it kind of help our gut issues and help us to learn to eat this way?
Okay, so there's a magic bullet, and it's actually it's a type of supplement, okay? And I want to back up because I had not long ago, I discovered I had SIBO. And SIBO is like one of the 3 big gut issues, okay? You have candida, leaky gut, and SIBO. Those are the big 3. They're very common. And SIBO stands for small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. It's where the bacteria in the large intestines grows, or it overgrows and goes into, I think, the small intestine, or it goes into the large intestine. Okay. And so then you have all this bad bacteria that's not supposed to be there, and it can cause massive issues. And the most common symptom that is not properly diagnosed is when people think they have IBS, and oftentimes it's really this SIBO. Now, the other two are just as bad: Candida, which is a yeast infection, and leaky gut, where the food is actually permeating through the stomach lining, which it's not supposed to do.
No.
All of these things can cause chronic health issues. It can cause weight gain, and obviously hormone imbalances, thyroid imbalances, fertility issues. So these are really important things. Okay, so I tried everything. I tried the elimination diet. I tried natural antibiotics, because I know I'm not going to do regular antibiotics, because that can mess the body up even more. And nothing worked. Okay. And so there were certain foods that if I ate, my stomach went crazy. Notably, the most obvious one was any sort of potato, because potato is a prebiotic fiber. So it fuels the bacteria and they feed on it. All right. Wow. And so I was like, well, this sucks. Like, I like eating this stuff. If I had beans, same thing, prebiotic fiber. And like, no one would want to be around me because I had such bad gas. And I was like, this isn't normal. What's going on here? Something's got to be wrong with me. Right. And so I tried everything, and I was like, so I'm not going to be able to eat Mexican food. I'm not going to be able to eat avocados, triggered it for some reason. I'm not going to be able to eat potatoes. This sucks. Yeah. Well, then I had on my podcast, I had a doctor who was talking about something called structured silver. It's different than colloidal silver, and it's different than nano silver, but it's in the same family. And silver is an antimicrobial, which means it kills bacteria, fungus, and viruses. And he said, the way we design this particular silver is it's bonded with water molecules. So number one, it's so small, it doesn't get stuck in your body like colloidal silver. And we figured out how to pH balance it, because the nano silver can cause high acidity levels in the body, which again, it's not good for anything. You don't want your body to be acidic. That's bad. So I said, I got to try this. So I took it for a month. Everything cleared up. Everything went away. I can eat any food with not a inkling of bloating, gas, upset stomach, brain fog, anything.
That's awesome.
And so what I have my clients do is I have all of them get this silver, because it's in water form. You take a couple teaspoons twice a day, and you get the most amazing energetic feeling and brain clarity. Because if you have bacteria or fungus in the body that you don't know about, and it gets rid of it, you see, when you have that in your body, your immune system is working overtime and you don't even know it. So it causes fatigue. If you get rid of that, all of a sudden your immune system, it's like, oh, great, this is awesome. I don't have to work. So all this other energy goes into your body and your mind. And so you have energy and brain clarity. And so, as a matter of fact, I'm working with a client. She had Candida. I said, here's the protocol for the silver. You take, I think, 2 tablespoons twice a day for 30 days, and then you scale it back. And within, it wasn't 30 days. It was, 42 days. It was 42 days. It was like right on the 42nd day, which would be 6 weeks. That's awesome. Everything started clearing up. She wasn't gassy anymore. She said, I'm not bloated anymore. And it was like, she's like, I'm never not going to do this, because it's just amazing. And that's kind of a shortcut magic bullet if you don't want to give up all these different foods,
I love that. So where do we get that from? From your website?
No, I don't sell it. So, okay. I wish I did. I'd be, but, right. The brand that I use is it's called My Doctor Suggests. I mean, you can find it on Amazon. There's multiple brands. What you want to look for, though, is not colloidal and not nano. It should specifically be structured silver, because the structured piece means it's bonded with a water molecule.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you said we just take it with kind of like a couple teaspoons a day?
Yeah. The cap on this particular bottle that I get, the cap is a teaspoon. So I take 2 capfuls in the morning. Okay. First thing when I wake up, 2 capfuls at night, last thing before I go to bed, and I feel amazing.
Wow.
I know I
Incredible.
don't normally support supplements, but that one I do because I literally, it was a lifesaver.
Wow. I love that. And I have to do the caveats. As always, you listeners know, check with your doctor before you add any new supplements, but this one sounds amazing. So I would definitely be asking about it for sure. I love that. So let's talk meal timing. We kind of alluded to it earlier. So talk to us about your thoughts on intermittent fasting and how often should we be eating?
Okay.
In the evening and then as we go through our day.
That's a good question. And I know I've been lengthy, but I'm trying to give so much because this is so important. Okay. So here's the thing. Intermittent fasting got popular with a few studies that were done over the course of a few weeks with a couple dozen participants, which in the statistical world is meaningless. All right. Unless you have tens of thousands of people from all over the country or all over the world, diverse backgrounds, and you do something for, 1 to 200 days where you can actually see the body's long-term reaction. It's very difficult with any sort of conclusivity to say, yes, this works. So, you could starve yourself and over the 2 weeks, your body's going to lose fat. And then after that, it's going to start losing muscle. But for that 2-week period, that's about the length of time it takes the body to adapt and respond. It's about 2 weeks. So if you do a study that's only, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks, you're just not getting a long enough time. Okay. I just need to throw that out there. So really, eating speeds up your body. It does. It's been proven to, but it's eating the right things. And let me tell you the worst thing you can eat to speed up your body: fats. Okay. Yet we're in a high fat intermittent fasting fad. And it's like, so everyone, what they do is they'll lose weight, then they stop losing weight, then they can't lose weight, and they've wrecked their body. Instead, fat has what's called a 5% metabolic reactivity, which means if you eat 100 calories worth of fat, it takes 5 of those calories to actually break the fat down and digest it. Carbohydrates have a 12% metabolic reactivity, meaning if you ate 100 calories worth of carbs, it would take 12 calories to break it down and to digest it. And protein has 20. All right. So protein is clearly the highest. So when you eat protein, it literally forces your metabolism to activate in order to even digest and absorb and break down the protein. Here's the catch, and this is why the high protein, low carb diets don't work. You need carbohydrates as a catalyst for that process. All right. So you need some carbs and some protein so the body has the energy to ramp up and break down the protein. It's like a campfire. Okay. If you try to light a log with a match, you're not going to light it. You need kindling. And the kindling is the carbs and the logs are the protein, which the fire is your metabolism, and then it can burn the fat. Wow. And so most people are like, oh, high protein, and they're trying to light a log with a lighter, or they'll do high fat, which has no real metabolic reactivity. But if you mix the carbs and the protein correctly, that yields the highest metabolic reactivity. Okay. So as far as timing goes, you want to eat as soon as you wake up, within an hour, to start your body's metabolism or campfire. You're throwing logs on the fire. You want to throw logs on the fire all day long. You want to stoke it all day long. And you do that by eating the meals that I just described with the right balance of carbohydrates, protein, and of course, healthy fats. I'm not saying not to have fat. I'm just saying that shouldn't be the focus. Gotcha. So every 2 to 3 hours is what's going to maintain your blood sugar. It's what's going to keep your metabolism activated and put your body into a thermogenic state. And it's what's going to keep the body, it's going to be long enough window where each time you eat, the body will then be able to absorb and assimilate all the nutrients you're eating, the proteins, the carbs, the fats. Gotcha. And so if you spread that out and you have 5 or 6 smaller meals during the day, starting when you wake up to get yourself off to the right foot, and then ending about 3 hours before you go to sleep, boom, you have just done the perfect eating day. You've primed your body. You've fueled it correctly. You should have massive energy, clarity of thought, fat. You should have an appetite again because your body's actually burning what you put in it, and everything's going to start regulating and balancing at the same time. So you couldn't do better than that.
I love that. And then what about overnight? So stop eating when, start eating when? You said within an hour of waking, but when should our last meal be?
I just said, so 3 hours before you go to bed is typically good. Now, here's what's going to happen as you put your body into a thermogenic state. You're going to start getting a little hungry as you go to bed. And some people freak out. I had this client named Roxanne, and she lost a lot of weight. I was her very first trainer, and that was the first time she'd ever worked out. But then she stopped losing weight, and she held for like 6 months or something. Anyway, I didn't see her for a little while, and then I saw her again, and she had lost a bunch of weight. And I said, "What'd you do different?" And she goes, I realized it was okay to be a little hungry at night. She's like, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that you were having that. She's like, yeah, anytime I get hungry, I thought, well, I have to eat. It's not good to be hungry. But she said, it's actually fine to be hungry as you go to bed. It's actually a good sign because you don't have stuff in your gut. That means if you have acid reflux, it's going to significantly reduce that. You're going to sleep better. You're going to sleep deeper. You're going to wake up hungry. So you'll want the breakfast. It'll break your fast. That's why it's called breakfast. And you'll be burning fat at night. Your body will do what it needs to do. And so that's a thing. That's a big thing, that a shift that a lot of people should make is, look, it's okay to be hungry before bed. It's okay. If you're a little hungry. Now, if you're starving, that probably means you haven't eaten enough during the day. But if you're like, oh, I'm a little hungry, that's good. That's good. Right. It's okay.
I love it. I love it. Well, I could talk to you all day, but we do have to wrap up. So tell us about your free gifts.
Yeah. So, okay. For all your listeners, I'm going to give them a free gift, and it's going to be at StuSchaefer.com/puzzle. Okay. StuSchaefer.com/puzzle. And what it is, it's a free masterclass on the 4 biggest mistakes that people make that are preventing them from losing weight. It's going to go into a lot of more detail with some of the stuff I mentioned on the show. And then they're also going to be able to get my special fat loss blueprint, which goes step by step about what I do with my clients, because it works every single time, and what they can do. And they can take the thermogenic quiz to see if they're putting their body into a catabolic state right now or a thermogenic state, and then what to do about it. So that's StuSchaefer.com/puzzle.
I love that. And we'll have that in the show notes as well, so it'll be easy to grab. And so tell us where we can find you. Are you on social media? You just said your website, so definitely there, but where else?
So Facebook, Stu Schaefer, Instagram, Stu Schaefer, and it's spelled StuSchaefer. And I'm happy to connect with anyone. You can message me, you can reach out to me. And I'd love to chat and help you out in any way I can, or answer any questions.
I love that. So tell us any final thoughts. Do you have any words of advice or any encouraging thoughts for our listeners before we close?
I do. Yeah. So the thing I'll tell you is this, the formula for optimizing your health and losing weight, which would also help with fertility overall, is you want to eat more, you want to work out less, don't overstress your body, and make sure that you're really giving it the nutrients that it needs. And when you do that, magical things happen. And it's just, do it for 60 days and let us know what happens. I'd love to hear about it.
For sure. I love that. Oh, well, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. This has been so amazing. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all for listening to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. And until next time, bye for now. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at CoachKayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. Make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at CoachKayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.